Yes, we are. They're coming in now. Welcome, everyone.
Oh, okay.
Lovely of you to join us this Monday, beautiful Monday morning in Sydney. If you could, on the chat, let us know where you're from, your state and your organisation. Let us know where you are in the world. Can everyone hear me? I can't see any chatters yet. Is everyone there?
Melissa from Melbourne.
Oh, Melissa. Hello, Melissa from Melbourne. Love you to join us.
It's nice. I've just put this on. Oh, great.
Vito. Fantastic. Sunshine Coast. What's the my image is frozen, is it? My image frozen, folks? No?
Vanessa from the lounge.
That's my wife from the lounge. Oh, my background. Yeah, my background is frozen. Yes, it has to be. It is not real. It is an image. So that's good. I thought I was frozen.
Yeah.
Well, it's fantastic for you all to join us. It's good to come in and take a seat, get comfortable, turn off your phones. Ian, you're black to me. I don't know why. I apologize. Looking good, Ian, whoever that is. Thank you. I don't know. That's good. Always nice to hear. I've even ironed my shirt this morning for everyone. It's good to get dressed, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's what they say.
That's a tip, definitely.
Fantastic. Okay, folks, we will kick off. We're a minute in. Thank you all for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ian Collier. I'm the program director that looks after all of the tech fests based here in Sydney, and it is wonderful to have you with us on behalf of myself and Hanover Fairs. As we begin the work of today, we are faced with brand new challenges. Recent events have turned our work and our lives upside down. And though we are physically isolating, I think it's more important than ever that we come together. And over the coming months, our team will be hoping to aim to facilitate sharing, insights, advice, and collaboration. We all need to ensure that when we come out the other end, which we will, that we're all going to be ready to go strategically, technically, and mentally. And mentally is what we're going to be looking at over the next 30 minutes. Over the coming weeks, we've got a raft of amazing speakers here to examine those issues, inspire us, and share their insights. But we all are a community. We're here to help each other. So if there are any questions, any burning suggestions or stuff that you'd like to share, please reach out to me. We'd love to be able to understand what you'd like to see. So on to today. You will see we are putting stuff in the chat box. Please continue to do that. We will ask you some questions over the next 30 minutes. We are over the moon that we are able to get on our very own counselling couch this Monday morning. How better to kick it off than to meet our very own psychologist. So we're over the moon to have Sharon with us. Sharon's with the Conscious Project. She's based here in Sydney. She's acclaimed and has been certainly more recently involved in a lot of TV and media, specialising on mental health. She's got some fantastic tips to either remind us or share with us, which might be some of them might be new. So it's great to have you with us. And folks, please put in the chat some questions that you might have. Sharon, wonderful to have you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Ian, and thanks everyone who's here present with us. I'd like to just give us, or kind of talk a little bit about just what we're going through at the moment from a psychological perspective, and then I'll go through 5 tips that I think can be really helpful while we're trying to cope with all the stuff that's going on, all this uncertainty in this unprecedented time. So, you know, with regards to people, humans, when we feel out of control, when there's uncertainty, like nobody likes uncertainty. So what we tend to do is we try and control everything so that we feel certain about things, and then that makes us feel safe. And a lot of us actually have developed that over time. But the problem with that is that we need to realize that we can't control everything. And I think we're in a place now where we're really realizing that. We're kind of forced to realize that this is just something that we aren't able to control. And so now we've got to look at how can we manage this with feeling this way. So it's really important to understand why we feel so panicked, obviously because of that uncertainty, but the importance of managing your panic and anxiety if we stay in a panicked state, we aren't able to think clearly or rationally. We tend to stay in that anxious type thinking. So we tend to have circular thinking. And it's just, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And then we just keep feeding. It's like a feedback loop of anxiety. So the more thoughts that are anxious that we have, the more our body feels anxious. And then the more our body feels anxious, the more our thoughts feel anxious. So we really have to try and short circuit that loop that keeps happening when we constantly think of things in an anxious way. Now, obviously, it's really difficult not to be exposed to anxious things. We're constantly having external stimuli or triggers, even going grocery shopping. It's quite, it used to be, well, I never liked grocery shopping personally, but so for some people it's just a neutral space. But now just seeing empty shelves or seeing people's faces, even it's a trigger for us. So even something that simple can be triggering. And then of course the news, we've got to really try and balance our exposure to the news, because the more news we listen to, and now I'm not saying we mustn't listen to news at all, but you've got to do it in a conscious way and not just be exposed to it all the time. If you're working from home, not to have your TV on and things like that, and try to have a break from those notifications and just consciously look, okay, today, now at this time, I want to look at something that's happening in the news, or watch a particular if the government's announcing something, just be conscious of that rather than just constantly reading everything. So it's really important to have a balance, because there's such a thing called emotional contagion, and I think that's what a lot of people are feeling right now. So what emotional contagion is if one person is feeling panicked and their behavior is exhibiting this panic and this anxiety, the next person, if you're listening to somebody who's feeling panic, it's like it's contagious. So you start feeling panicked. Oh my gosh, why am I not worrying more? And things like that. And then that just sets up a whole platform of anxiety. And like I said, it's not a healthy place to be in. The one last thing I just want to add about that is also, when we're in a stressed state, our body's immune system actually gets lowered, because the body's just pumping cortisol and adrenaline, so all these hormones into our system. And when that happens, we're just in that heightened state all the time. So it's so important to try and learn ways to try and calm yourself, even though, of course, the calming yourself or taking a deep breath isn't going to resolve the issue. But what it does do is it just helps you calm yourself so you can think more clearly and then behave more rationally, so that we don't do things like panic buying and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's really important, I think, just to kind of start it off, just understanding why it's so important to try and learn ways to calm ourselves. And the other thing is, I'm sure you're aware of yin and yang. We've been in a society that is just yang, so that's active, fast-paced. Our worth is linked to how busy we are. And now a lot of us are forced to really slow down and just to, we're left with our thoughts, and nobody likes that. And, we try and avoid that as often as we can. Hence why a lot of people are workaholics. So now I think as we've kind of forced into this process of just slowing down, and that's terribly scary. But I want you to try and see this as an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to learn about yourself and understand yourself, as well as your family or your partner, whoever you're stuck at home with, so that we can come out of this in a more conscious, aware space. And I think, this has forced us into doing something like that. You can either stay in that stressed state and just kind of stay in that loop, or you can go, hang on, okay, well, what can I do about it? And what can, what is going to help me through this process? So with these 5 tips that I talk about, of course, everybody's unique. There's no manual. I have so many clients who are like, I didn't get the manual for life. And it's like, I wish there was a manual, because that would help a lot of us, I think. But I'm going to provide 5 tips that I would see as a guide. And I just would like you to, take what you need from it. But, if something doesn't make sense to you, that's fine. You're welcome to write something in the chat box and I'll try and explain. But it isn't easy work, is what I wanted to say. I know in the sort of content of this chat was about 5 quick tips, and I know everybody likes to have quick, just give me the answer, and it's not that simple, of course, but I'll go through it and just explain. The first one I'd really like for you to do is to acknowledge how you can become more self-aware, so becoming more attuned to yourself while you're going through this. Because from what I'm hearing from all my clients, and they go, I've got so many different variations of clients, people who've lost their job, or people who are stuck at home with their partner or their family or their kids. And everyone's going through something. There's always a different consequence, but it's all because of the same reason. It's important to know what your triggers are. and to know what really helps you and what hinders you when you're in situations. So, for example, with me personally, I'm quite an introvert, so I need my own space. So being stuck at home with my partner can be quite challenging, but I need to have like a breakout room, and I need to, I've let him know that I need some space sometimes, and it's got nothing to do with him, but this is just what's going to help fill my emotional reserves up. So I'd really encourage you to try and become more self-aware. When you felt angry about something, try to just take a step back, take a breath, and go, what was it that made me feel that way? What is this feeling? So it's not like, why am I feeling this way? It's more, what could be influencing me feeling this way? Or what is this feeling telling me about what's important to me? So if you frustrated because you can't go and meet a friend for a drink, what is that telling you? That frustration is telling you that you really value connecting with people. And when you've acknowledged that and can identify what that value is underneath that emotion, then you can start looking at ways you can try and manage that, so that you can then try and make that value more prominent in your life. So if connection is really important to you, how can you connect with people in this current climate that we're in? So connection is so important. But I hope that makes sense. So it's important to try and recognize what your feelings are, and then try and understand why you could be feeling that way. I find a lot of people blame, and I think this is going to happen a lot. I'm already seeing it with clients. Couples are fighting more, they're drinking more as well. It's just avoidance and fighting more. So we blame each other, and it's very easy to blame. But when you say your partner said something to you in a tone and you get upset by it, instead of reacting to that partner, try to just go, okay, what was it about that? Why am I feeling this way? What is it about that situation that's made me feel this way? So the main thing, the first step, is just that self-awareness, to try and understand what you're feeling and why you're feeling that. And then that can help you to understand what helps you and what hinders you. So for example, for me, a trigger for me would be to expose myself to the news. And if I know that, then I will limit my exposure to the news. So I was just wondering if we, and then obviously to try and prevent having a crisis tunnel vision is really important when we're in this state. But the question I was wondering if you, maybe Ian, you could answer first is, do you know what helps you? It could be one thing, like what can help you just to cope better in a situation like this? When you're feeling stressed, what helps you? What is one thing that you can do that helps you when you're stressed?
One thing that helps me when I'm stressed like this is we do a meditation before I go to sleep. Because one of the things, like I don't even know what it is. It's a sleep app that my wife's got, and it kind of talks me down because I tend to think a lot before I go to sleep.
Yes.
And it kind of takes away that, or at least diminishes that that frenzy, if you like, or the traffic or the noise before I sleep. Because sleep's really important for me. If I don't get sleep, I'm pretty screwed. So that's one thing.
Brilliant, and that's brilliant that you actually implement that. And do you do that most nights, would you say?
No, I don't.
That's what hinders you. It's not doing it every night.
It's an eye rest. It's a eye rest yoga nidra. Thanks, my wife just said she's on. So yes, it's that. Brilliant. But no, I don't do it every night because, like many people, I don't do a lot of things that are good for me a lot of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good point, because a lot of people know what they need to do. And that's why I didn't want to just kind of rattle off, you need better sleep, you need to eat better, you need to exercise, all that. And I will mention it briefly, but it's about how can we be kind to ourselves while we're in this process of trying to implement all these new things, and to try and just do one thing. Don't try a million things. I see a lot of posts saying, use this time to really, become self-actualized and stuff like that. And it's like, fantastic if that's your goal, but just start with one thing that you can start implementing. And if you can do it more regularly, it becomes easier. So that's great. I wonder, sorry.
We've got a couple of a person has just mentioned their practice gratitude, keeping a daily journal and writing 3 things a day.
Yeah.
There's a comment there from Jacqueline. Hinders her at the moment is having so many Zoom meetings where the loudest voices tend to dominate the situation.
Totally. Yeah.
Feel like I'm not heard. It's said there.
And is that with work meetings? I'm assuming.
I believe so. Zoom meeting, I would imagine. So yes, indeed.
Okay, I agree. I can hear, I mean, I can completely understand that as well, just because it's quite hard to, people don't kind of notice nuances with social connections when we see our faces in a Zoom. It's a bit difficult, for sure. And it's unfortunate because you kind of have to still have Zoom meetings. You can't really avoid that.
Separating work from home, it's really hard having the laptop in the kitchen there and the rest of the evening. That one thing I've just done, Melissa, and I'm not going to take over, is I've put everything in a different room that I can. I mean, I'm lucky in that sense, but that helps. So I've got a definite space. So anyway.
That's a really good point. And I mean, obviously we're not all able to, but if you can have a dedicated space purely for work, even if it's just a nook or a corner, you know, where you try and make it into like a space that's just a little bit separate from the rest of the house, that is really helpful. Trying to not work from the bedroom if possible. But again, we have to adapt. We didn't plan for this. It's not like we've all got our studios in the other room, you know. So it's you can just do what you need to do, but just being aware of that. Or even if you have a balcony, to try and kind of work on the balcony for some time, just to kind of get a bit away. Dedicated space definitely kind of helps to pack it up at the end. Exactly, that's a good point from Jacqueline as well. If you can't have a dedicated space, make sure you pack it all up so that it's not all open. Really good point, definitely.
Cool, thanks.
So I guess, and so we've talked a bit about helping and hindering, and I think the important thing in there is like, so what environment do I need in order to be sort of the most emotionally agile, or the most the best person that I can be in this current situation, understanding that we're in a stressed state, of course, and so everybody's emotions are heightened, but just to try to learn to ways that you can help yourself. So something that helps you might not be the same thing that your partner would need. And then you need to communicate and explain what it is that you need. You can't just assume that your partner knows what you need, but I'll get to that as well. The second point, and I know this is a loaded word because everyone's like self-care. Oh, what is self-care? I don't know what self-care is or things like that, but self-care and self-compassion is really important in order for you to gain that self-awareness. So with self-care isn't just like a hot bubble bath, you know. It is, of course, whatever that is for you. Maybe reading a book, just some quiet time that makes sense to you. It could be something creative that you're doing, painting, things like that. It could be journaling as well, and that's where you can try and sort of learn more about yourself, where you can start just writing out your thoughts. And I'd recommend that in order to try and learn more about yourself. A lot of the time we think, we always think, but when we try and like, okay, so what happened, and you kind of think about it, that's fine to do that, but I'd highly encourage you to actually write it out, like old school writing it out, because that helps you process what you're thinking. And also when you're writing stuff out, you can't write as quickly as you think. So you're forced to slow down and consolidate your words and put it down into a tangible piece of paper that's out of you, you know. So I'd really encourage that as well with regards to self-care tips. With self-care, it's just, we've got to look at things that are going to build our emotional reserves up. So of course, staying active, staying connected, and staying relaxed or rested is really important. And I always talk about 5 holistic health tips, which are things you already know. And I like that you mentioned it, Ian. Sleep is the most important thing. And I know a lot of people know this, but it's like, well, how do you sleep? You know, you can't just sleep right now. You have to relax in order to sleep. So implementing some sort of relaxation routine before bed is brilliant. It can be really helpful to try and switch those thoughts off. And it's important to keep this in mind as well, that anxious thought, of course, it's a natural feeling to have. We're trying to make sense of our world and it doesn't make sense. So we keep going over and over like, oh, but then, and then what? And we're trying to control it with our thoughts. But we need to remind ourselves that it's being productive by being able to let those thoughts go. Like, you don't need to be thinking about it all the time. And if you're able to write it all out, you can then tell yourself, well, I've already written it out. I don't need to keep thinking about it. I can tackle it tomorrow if there's an issue that you're trying to deal with. So with the holistic health tips, it's sleep, eating well, but of course having a balance. Everything I'm saying is a guide, and I'm not talking about strict, you know, veganism or things like that. Like, just do what you can do in order to help yourself. Exercise. We're still able to exercise outside, or, you know, running by yourself. But if you can't do that, then trying to do something online as well. There are a lot of online things. And then what I like to differentiate is between leisure and relaxation, because I think a lot of people think of relaxation as like reading a book, and it is to a point. But when I say relaxation, I'm meaning deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, where you actually take a deep breath in through your nose, counting to 4, hold for 4, exhale out your mouth at a count of 8. If you can do that, because that's the quickest way of calming your body, and then that sends a message to your brain to calm your mind as well. But so deep breathing is part of relaxation, progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense your muscles and then you relax them, visualization, mindfulness, and I think Michael spoke about mindfulness quite a bit as well in the last session, journaling, meditation, but something that makes sense to you. So I've got some clients who like outright, they go, I don't meditate. They just say straight up, I'm like, oh, okay, I've got to be creative with like how I word things. It's like, what about mindfulness? No, also not mindfulness. So it's like just being present. So, you know, I don't meditate on the top of a mountain like a Buddha, you know, so you don't have to do that. But I love plants, and I've got, not this plant, but at my practice, I've got little African violets, and I love just being in the moment, looking at their little furry leaves and the velvet and the little glitter on the petals. It's just, yeah, I love it. So that's like a form of mindfulness. So don't forget that you could do it at any time. You could have a cup of tea and just notice the warmth of the cup while you just, you know, you're just being using your senses. So you're not thinking about this. I had one client who was really chuffed with himself because he thought he was ironing and he was doing mindfulness. And he's like, I am ironing. And like, that's cognitive though. So it's try to be in the moment with it rather. And you don't have to do ironing, by the way. It can be something that you enjoy. So that's really important as well. But once we're able to calm our nervous system, then we can think more rationally. So it's really important that you understand why this is important. And yeah, so like I said, leisure is more relaxing, watching a movie, things like that. But try to also implement some sort of relaxation where you actually are just letting those thoughts pass. You know, it's not, meditation is not thinking. It's important to know that as well. A lot of people think, oh, I don't switch my mind off. But it's not about switching your mind off. It's just about when you get a thought, you just try and let it go. So what is one self-care activity that you find helps you? I'd love you to, maybe you can answer that, Ian. More of a self-care type activity. And then the rest of you can.
I was listening to you, and I was thinking a lot of things. Two things I've noticed around what you mentioned there is when we're out walking, the amount of birds that you can hear, which I don't know whether I could hear them before. I just wasn't paying them any attention.
Yeah.
But also the amount of flowers that seem to be around. That sounds really like really weird. But I'm taking pictures of flowers a lot, which I find there's some amazing flowers in Australia. I've been here 10 years. I've never noticed half of them.
And so,
walking by the water, Beck says, loves to swim in the ocean. Helen, I hope it's not one of the beaches that's been banned that you're swimming in, but anyway.
You'll be arrested. Yeah.
You'll be arrested. Exercise, 10,000 steps. We did 13,000 yesterday. I was knackered.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Make eye contact and smile, Jackie says. Yes, exactly.
Virtual boot camp and spin class. Wow. Yeah.
Sure. Melissa, you're going to come out of this looking like a gym instructor.
Yeah. And Joe says collecting shells. I love that. Just really taking note of what you're wanting to pick up and feeling the shell. Like, I love that. Yeah. And having a great cup of tea. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, that's fantastic. So it's important to look at those. Your gardening is wonderful. So anything related to nature can really help you stay connected as well, just to like the earth, you know. And just a point there. So some of us can't necessarily go out to nature. So even just looking at beautiful images of nature is really helpful as well. They've done some research where that also kind of invokes that same kind of feeling of connection and good, all those good hormones, those positive hormones. It helps with that. So that's also helpful. Because not all of us have gardens, I think, but if you can, just even like a pot plant then, or just taking note of your plants, that could be helpful. Yeah, brilliant. Those are fantastic examples. With the third point then, I wanted to go into more communication. So having clear communication, because I find that this is the time where we need to be able to learn how to communicate. And a lot of people haven't learned how to communicate. You know, our models have been our parents, and no offense to any parents, but their models were also, you know, depending on the generation that they all grew up in, you know, just you don't talk about feelings, we don't talk about anything, and vulnerability, what is that? So it's important to try and sort of recognize that you can start learning better ways to communicate, or healthier ways to communicate. And when I say clear communication it's the third tip, it's specifically for this time, because we can't just, go to work and have some breathing space and then come back to our partner. Right now, the only space we have is just the other room or the bathroom, if you need some space. So learning about what it is that your triggers are, learning about what it is that you need, and then learning to be able to clearly communicate that to your partner. The one thing that I find with couples, which is a big fallacy, is this expectation that the partner should know what we want or need. And it's really challenging, because if you don't even know what you need in that moment, how do you expect your partner to know? Even if you've been married for 40 years, we're all so unique and different. So it's really important to have some understanding that I need to actually communicate what it is that I need, or what's important to me, or when that was discussed, or when you said that really made me feel whatever it was that you felt. I know it's not always easy. I used to think, when I was a novice psych, I used to think no matter, if you communicated in the best way with, lovely tone and an open space, you're going to be heard. And unfortunately, I've been working a long time now and realized that doesn't necessarily work. Not everybody's open to listening, even if you present it or, articulate it in a really great, healthy way. But I think so basically the important thing is being able to have clear communication, knowing what it is that you need at this time. So some of us need some quiet time in the morning. Some people can't talk before they have a coffee in the morning or something like that. But being able to kind of speak to your partner about those things that you need, and then for your partner to talk about what they need as well. It's always a give and take. I think it's important to not have expectations that they need to meet your needs or make you happy or things like that. We need to make ourselves happy. So if we can learn better ways to become more attuned to ourselves and know what it is that makes us happy or makes us sad, then we are able to regulate our emotions more. And then whatever our partner is giving us, it's just a cherry on the top, but holding space for somebody is really important during clear communication as well, and having clear boundaries is really important. Okay, I'll get to your question, Beck. Beck just asked, communication can be very difficult. 100% agree. And do you have tips on how to take the emotion out of communication? Really good point. I'll get to that in a minute, if that's okay. Because the thing with them, well, actually, maybe let's just stay with it. Is that okay, Ian?
Yeah.
Because it's a great question, and I think it's tricky. How do you take emotion out of people? And it's impossible, actually. But I think the important thing is that we learn how we are going to be received. So if you can learn about your facial features, your tone, the way you're speaking. If you're talking fast and you're kind of doing this, and you always, the kind of language that you use, you always do this thing. And it actually had my partner and I had a little spat the other day just because of something left in the kitchen, and I wasn't my best self, I must admit, but we resolved it. And that's the thing, is that rupture, and as long as you can repair it, that's the most important thing. It's not about not having ruptures, just for your information. But with regards to emotions, I think when we're emotive, a lot of stuff is happening, and this is like a whole nother session, which I could always get into it in another space, but it's not for the session for now. But whatever our partner is making us feel, a lot of that is from a past neglect that we've experienced from parental child development. There's always, our partner is like a mirror to us. So if you're feeling upset about something your partner said, I'd really encourage you to even take some space. You might need some time out. You don't have to resolve it there and then. You might need some space to calm yourself so that you can really communicate what it is that was upsetting. Because if you communicate there and then, what you probably notice is that you start getting reactive, and it's all about responding rather than reacting. And that might mean you need to take a time out. I once just walked to the bathroom. I stayed in the bathroom for like 10 minutes just to calm myself down before I came out. And I was like, okay, this is what I was feeling. This is what I heard. So a good tip for communication that gets a bit out of control is the story I'm telling myself is that you don't care about me. Because often any little surface thing of like, you left the glass out, and you react to that. It's not about that. It's about you feeling not considered, or you not being cared for or thought of, usually. So if you can try and understand what the underlying emotion is, you're more able to articulate what you need from your partner, or what you were telling yourself through that interaction. But that that's a great question, but it's quite a big question for this, unfortunately. But I'm happy to, if you want to contact Ian, and Ian can let me know, and we can kind of speak in that way. If you have any other questions, or if you want me to elaborate more, I'm happy to do that via Ian. But I guess, so I think the most important thing with communication, remember, it's not just you communicating to somebody else, it's you receiving communication as well. Communication is two ways. So an important way to communicate, or one part of communication, is about clear boundaries, knowing what you need, what your boundaries are, but also holding space. So Stephen Covey's got a great quote, and it's seek first to understand and then to be understood. And a lot of the time we don't do this. We seek to tell you what's going on, or to control, or tell you that I'm right, rather seek to understand. And you do that by holding space for someone. So I just wondered, how would you define holding space? Because that's really important in communication. I don't know, Ian, do you know? Or how would you describe holding space for someone?
I don't really know. I think it would be a case of letting them speak. I think one of the things certainly on Zoom that I've noticed even more so is that people interject
Yes.
a lot more. And I think it's because of just the technology. It's quite hard to know when people have stopped, because it's, it breaks someone's dying to speak.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've noticed, but letting people kind of, get their point across at least. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, actually. I think Zoom could really try and help with that, because I've had a few clients who kind of, just when you interview in a group, people do always talk over each other. We're always talking, you're waiting for that person to stop so that you can say something. But if you can just try and be calm within yourself and not feel like you've got to get something out, and just really listen for what they're saying. I think Melissa mentioned hearing and listening, yes, without the intent to respond. That's a brilliant way of holding space. And exactly as you said, Ian, as well. Yeah, Beck mentions listening, eye contact, paraphrasing. Absolutely. There's all those tips. SOLA is the definition, or what is the word? Anagram for, no, not anagram, I can't think of the word, sorry. But it's just solos, like sitting squarely, like face, open. So if you kind of have that closed off, you're obviously not letting the person in, just things like that, listening. So that's what defines active listening. And that's what holding space is. Holding space is showing the person that you are there with them, you're present with them, you're trying to empathize with them. And I know Michael mentioned empathy as well last time. And so actually letting them speak, but you're acknowledging what they're doing and what they're saying. And you're right, eye contact, facial features it's ingrained in us. We are constantly scanning another person to see what they could be thinking. And that's a safety behavior that is hardwired in us, because we are part of a tribe, like if we think of caveman days and things like that. We are social beings, so we need to feel like we always belong to something, and we do that by checking in with somebody, and we're not consciously doing it. So that's why with this current climate we're in, having Zoom face-to-face is so important. It's more important than texting or phone calls as well, just so that you can actually see a person's face. So those are great examples. Definitely eye contact is a big one. And then just with the fourth point is emotional connection. I'll go through the 5 as a summary at the end as well, but emotional connection. So this now is about, I think a lot of people have talked about, this physical isolation that we're in. Remember, physical isolation is not social isolation. And I know you're aware that it's important to stay connected, but the reason we need to stay connected is so that we don't get lonely. And loneliness is a number one feeling that can slip into depression and just even further. It's quite dark to get to a place of that. Now, often we do feel lonely in moments and in experiences, and as you know, I'm sure as well, we can feel lonely in a group. But it's important to be able to try and, if you are like we're more likely to feel lonely in this place now that we're in, because we can't actually do the things or can't meet people. So it's important to recognize how important loneliness is, and therefore what can we do to try and manage that and curb that. And I know I'm not saying you'd constantly go to so many Zoom meetings and things like that, but do try and connect with people. Maybe there's somebody you haven't connected with in a while, and I'd encourage you to do that. So who here, just a question, is starting to feel lonely while they're stuck at home? You could just say yes. I won't mention names if you're happy to answer. Just because I've noticed a lot of people are, yeah, thank you. There are a lot more people who are feeling quite alone. You know, I've got some clients as well who live at home alone, so they don't have any other connection or touch, physical touch. And that's really important for us as people. So I think if you can be quite creative in trying to connect with others and have things like work challenges, like maybe the step challenge, like with your colleagues, you know, or star jumps, and be creative. I would encourage you to be a leader in this, because a lot of people get so stuck in their loneliness that is linked to their self-worth. And I've got a lot of people that I speak to who believe that they're unworthy of being part of something, so they won't initiate. So there are a lot of people like that. So if you feel that this is so important and you've got the capacity to, I'd really love you to try and think of creative ways to reach out to people that you may think could be struggling with this, because that's going to help you as well. So I was just thinking, what can you do today? Like, what one thing can you do today to build a connection with someone? Do you have an idea, Ian? Is there anything that you'd like to add with regards to what you could do today, like one thing to try and connect with someone?
I think even in the case of actually smiling at people and saying hello, good morning, that's one of the things I think is a lot of people are a little bit scared of doing that.
Yes.
And also something which is linked to me is that I find it kind of freaks me out a little bit when people get really close to me nowadays.
Yes.
One thing I've just started to do, which is kind of different to where you are, but that's it anyway, is you know, nothing personal, but like, can you keep away from me? You know what I mean? Nothing personal.
Yeah.
But can you kind of stand away?
Yeah.
But I think just being like speaking to people and talking to people when you're out and saying good morning, I find that really good. Otherwise, yeah, it's just connecting with people.
Absolutely. And I love that as well, that just the smile, even a smile like at the grocery shop, you know, just to be able to, or if you are walking to a distance apart from somebody, acknowledging their humanness, acknowledging that we're all in this together. A smile is amazing. Or even just eye contact, or just that, you know, calm facial expression is brilliant. Yeah. And Sharon mentioned call someone instead of texting. Yeah, absolutely. And then, so Melissa mentioned a group, she's got a group of friends on Zoom, and we did it in an exercise session together. That is so awesome. That's so great. Absolutely. So you kind of in it together, and yeah, brilliant. And I think we can be really, really creative. I know some people have like virtual drinks on a Friday night because they'd always meet up on a Friday night. So try keep routine and consistency as well, if you can. And I think it's amazing. You know, we do have an opportunity where we can be online. It would be awful if we didn't have this platform, so we've got to use it. And just to keep that in mind is that this isn't going to be like this forever, so we're just going to try and use it as much as we can given the situation that we're in. Weekly quiz with colleagues, brilliant. And connecting with people outside of business circle of friends as well, definitely. And I think now's the time to, like I said, explore and see who you haven't maybe had the time to connect with for a while. Somebody overseas even, you know, just being able to have more FaceTime chats, I think would be great. So it's brilliant. Just emotional connection is so important. And then the last bit is a bit more practical with regards to our work days, having a flexible structure. So actually, somebody just mentioned.
That was me. That's
me.
Oh,
is that you? Brilliant.
Sorry, that's me.
Oh, great. Sorry. I was like, oh, fantastic.
No, sorry to interrupt, but it was linked to that, and I thought it'd be a good idea to send it this afternoon. On every Monday, we're going to, for anyone involved in HR and L&D, and we are looking to do this for legal as well, for any of the legal participants from the community, is a 75-minute or an hour kind of group session where people can talk about what's happening in their worlds and get an empathetic ear, a sounding board, and zero judgment, zero advice, just somewhere to come in and talk about what's happening in the world. So if you'd like to be involved in that, let me know. I will send you the links. It is only for participants who are practitioners, and not folks who are involved in consulting or selling product, unfortunately. But that's what we're doing right now.
I think it's so wonderful. No, that's brilliant. It's a perfect opportunity to mention that. I'd highly encourage everyone to be a part of that if they feel it would work for them. Yeah. So just the last point is having a flexible structure. And I'm sure you've all heard about, trying to keep your routine as much as possible. But you've really got to do that in a compassionate way. This change is, like we've heard, it's unprecedented. It's something we didn't choose. So we're suddenly having to try and work out, how do we manage all this stuff, and suddenly in this confined space. So you've got to be kind to yourself. So what I would encourage though is to try and get up at the same time and go to bed at the same time. Try keep that sleep routine or if you haven't had a good sleep routine, try and use this time to really implement it, because having enough sleep, most people, well, everyone I would say, is going to be impacted if you're not sleeping well. And obviously with anxiety, we tend to not sleep as well. So there's some great strategies that I've got about sleep management as well, which I'm happy to share with Ian if anyone's interested. I've got like sleep tips, because it's so important. But just for today, it's having that flexible structure. And when I say flexible, it's like, I find a lot of people might be good at making up a timetable of, okay, so at 8 o'clock I'm going to do this, and at 8:15 I'm going to do this. And something external that you hadn't foreseen is going to impact that. And then a lot of the time I find people like, well, it doesn't work. I can't stick to timetables, and they berate themselves and they feel shameful because they aren't able to stick to anything. Just try to be kind with yourself and use it as trial and error. It's always work in progress. Everything in our life is work in progress, actually. If we become perfectionistic and rigid about how things need to be, there's no room for error, there's no room for movement. So it just has to be a bit more flexible. So if you can have a timetable where you do try and stick to it, so having lunch at a similar time, but making sure you go away for lunch, you close that laptop, you do not look at anything. Having some space is so imperative now. Getting your work clothes on, like Ian, I don't know, have you got like pajama shorts underneath?
I have got jeans on. I've got jeans on, yes. Honestly, I have.
I've been really enjoying, I think I mentioned it to you, I do like half my hair, just the front, just style the front, and the back is like usually.
Well, it's a good job, Sharon, because it was 20 minutes ago you had, an hour ago you had your curlers in, but now you've got your curlers. That's all good.
Absolutely. I said, sure. Yeah. But getting like work clothes, working as if you're going to leave for work is really important. And use the time, I'm sure you've heard this as well, is using the time that you would usually use to commute to start that new thing that you've always wanted to start, or you think you'd like to experiment with. So, and I'd encourage you, I find, like I said, a lot of people, there's a lot of resistance with like meditation and things like that. But if you can choose one thing that is helpful for you, even if it's 5 minutes of just deep breathing, all you're doing is bringing your attention to your body, noticing how your diaphragm moves as you inhale. Just do that for 5 minutes, or 5 minutes is quite a long time, but just do that for a few minutes, even in the morning when you'd normally be traveling to work. That's brilliant. And try and acknowledge the things that you're doing, even if they're small. They actually have to be small. If we set ourselves up for doing, I'm going to do all these 10 things now, you're going to fail, because just nobody's ever going to be able to do that. So don't set yourself up for failure. Start with something small and try that for, I always say to clients who say, I don't exercise, or I don't whatever, is say, okay, what about just experimenting with it? Like I'm changed the word of exercise to movement, even just for someone. It was just movement. It just had a different feel for her. So she was able to do movement. But just really kind of trying to implement that every day, and just give it a go for a few days before you judge it. That's just what I'd encourage you to do. And then also look at apps. If you're not sure what to do, try to find guided meditations. There's so many amazing apps out there. There's Calm, Headspace, Smiling Mind. Those are really great ones. So I was thinking, what is one important part of your routine that is important for you? So for me, for example, I used to always eat breakfast while I was getting ready, and that's no rest. You've got to rest and digest. So now what I do, and I've been doing it for a while now, is just really, I make my oats and my coffee, and I sit down. I just sit down. I don't look at anything. And I really love that. It's so simple, but it's just sitting quietly. I mean, I'm grateful that I can do that. Of course, I know some people have kids and things like that, but just something simple. What is it that you do that is important, an important part of your routine? Do you have something like that is really important for you? Ian?
I think the change from one of the changes is having breakfast on the balcony. We've got a really quite a nice balcony. We're very fortunate, and sitting on the balcony with coffee. I can make coffee now, which I've never really made coffee, and it's not bad.
So you've acquired that skill.
I seem to have. I mean, it wasn't brain surgery in the first place, but
I want to know if you can make foam faces and
none of that. No, it's a week-long black. It's basically the the Italian way where you put it on the hob. I don't even know what it is, but you can tell how competent I am at this. So, but that's one thing. That's Brilliant. One thing that we do. I do.
Brilliant. I think some people have mentioned listening to podcasts about mindset and self-improvement. That's brilliant, Brooke. And then starting work and finishing at usual times at work was bleeding into personal time. Yeah, so being really strict with it now. So that's a really important routine. Doing makeup, definitely, absolutely, because that just makes you feel like ready. Hey, definitely, that's a good
and
one.
And Beck, I think what we need is if you can put a video of you dancing in the living room. And we can circulate around that would be good as well. It could be brilliant. It could be brilliant for our mental health.
Yeah. Absolutely, no judgment, just enjoyment. So that was my next question, is if you don't have a routine or you don't really know what works for you, maybe what is one important thing that you'd like to put into it? So just maybe from what we've talked about today, is there anything that maybe you felt, oh, actually I have heard about this mindfulness thing, or maybe I do need to do a bit more deep breathing. So is there anything that you'd like to try and do now to implement into your routine that you can do, like starting today? So Beck's saying her recent addition is dancing in the living room after sitting at the laptop all day. Brilliant. So
making the bed. Brooke mentions making the bed, which I was thinking actually the bed being made is, I don't know, seems for some reason quite key for me right now.
Absolutely. And that just kind of leads into the whole, like, if your place where you're working is chaotic, you feel chaotic. So it's about having, minimal things on your table and stuff like that. Is there time just for that one question of just like, does anyone have anything that they would like to add to their routine now after just some of the things we've talked about? So Vanessa, stop watching the news and taking a break. Brilliant. Definitely.
Anything, folks? You would like to journaling?
Yeah. Brilliant. Find more ways to connect with people. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Yes. So I wasn't into meditation at all, but downloaded Headspace and it has meditation for beginners. Exactly. Doing makeup, think that would help me feel more human. Brilliant. Yes. Journaling. Absolutely. There are a lot of with journaling, it's just really about kind of understanding yourself. So when you journal, it's not like, why did he say that thing? It's more about, why did I feel that way? Or just trying to check in with yourself. And journaling is an opportunity to try and understand yourself more. That's important. It's just one last thing, if I can add. All these ways to try and relax yourself and calm your mind and calm your body. Remember, it isn't resolving the issue that we have. It's not going to, you're not going to come up with the solution to how do we get rid of COVID-19. But what it does do is it just calms you so you can deal with things in a clearer way and in a calmer way. And so if anything comes up with your partner, for example, because it's going to, absolutely, there's going to be more arguments now because we're taking our stress out on our partner, and that's just the norm of what we do. It's not fair though. But with that, if you can learn to calm yourself, and remember, it's not about not feeling anxious or not feeling stressed. It's just about when you feel anxious and when you feel stressed, how do you calm yourself so that you can actually communicate what it is that you need, what you're feeling. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of I actually wanted to work more on communication with partners. I want to do an online thing as well. So I'll if anyone's interested in that, you can please put your name to Ian, because I'd love to help, because I think that's such a need right now. We don't really know how to communicate or why we feel the things we feel. And our partners really are mirrors to our own wounds, and we don't realize it, and we just end up moaning at our partner and then they moan back, and then you have to separate yourself in a tiny room, and that's not helpful.
Not helpful at all. There's not a lot of room unless you live in a massive house, and even then it becomes smaller, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Fantastic. We have gone 45 minutes, 47 minutes. Thank you, folks. Kathy is Sharon's mum, and she definitely wanted a shout out. Kathy, Sharon did fantastically well, so thank you for that. And if you Sharon, you didn't mention it. If you want to check out Sharon's cats, they have their own Instagram page. It's gone very, very popular. So check that out if you'd like information. What is it, Sharon?
I'll type it. They call it their names, Lilu and Aya.
Check those out. They're into cat acrobatics. It's pretty good. Yeah. So check those out. Folks, if you have any further questions, if you'd love to get in contact with Sharon, please give me an email, flick me an email. If you would like to join one of our drop-in groups, which are starting this afternoon at 1 o'clock, and you're in HR and L&D, please let me know. If you're from the legal community and you'd like to do something similar, please let me know as well. We're more than happy to facilitate that. It is just going to be a case of talking about what is happening and the challenges and the issues you're facing right now. Think of it as a HR anonymous or a legal anonymous kind of meeting where people can talk about whatever it is that is happening right now. Thank you for joining us, Sharon. Thank you. It was amazing. I already feel a lot more calmer than I did 49 minutes ago. It's been a stressful weekend for us. Yeah. So it's wonderful to connect with you and everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we will be in touch with more sessions. We've got a fantastic one later on this week with JT Costman. It will be different to Sharon's, but it will be nonetheless as incredible. So thank you. And folks, have a lovely afternoon and rest of your day, and we will speak soon. Thanks again, Sharon. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, folks.